Welcome into a brand new Patriots Beat Patriots Daily crossover episode. 3/4 of the crew with you today. Alex, Barth, Brian, Hines, Taylor, Kyles. A little over 24 hours after Patriots final roster cuts. It's been quite the 36 hours in New England with cuts starting on Tuesday morning. And we are here to break down all of it. We'll react to the initial roster. We'll react to the moves today, the waiver claims, the practice squad, all of that. Really just kind of where things sit here as the Patriots transition from their initial roster to their week one roster. And if I may start us off, gentlemen, just my big picture takeaway on the last 36 hours, and really it's a carryover of my takeaway from the offseason. My goodness, did they overhaul this thing? They really gutted it. And I know there are still some players on the roster that fans may look at and wonder why they're here, or maybe not happy they're on the roster. And this isn't to say that every player they brought in is the right player, or every player they let go of, they were right to let go of. But a good amount of roster turnover in a season is, I mean, you get up near 40%, you're up there. Like, that's pretty extreme. From week 18 to week one, you have 40% of the roster players on your roster are new players. That's a lot. And going through it today, and I forget which way I had the number. I counted this earlier, and then I forgot how I counted out it. It's either 25 players who were or weren't on the week 18 roster last year or on the team now. Either way, that's about 50%. I think it's 25 of 53 new players is butting right up. It's like a 2 points shy of 50. So again, we'll see if it ultimately works out. And this isn't a new take. We saw it in the offseason, but you wanted an overhauled roster. This is as overhauled as you're going to get. And there's still room to go, especially when it comes to depth. And I think that's why some of those other guys people thought might be gone are still here. They're still going to have to work on their depth. But Taylor, this is a brand new Patriots team we will see a week from Sunday at Gillette Stadium.
Yes, but I understand this is a rare situation. It also just doesn't, like, I'm not as rocked by this as I feel like a lot of people are. Like, I'm seeing all the stats and all that. And like, yes, that is significant. But we've been here, right? It's not like
Sure.
There are younger players where I know I in particular, I'm like, hey, I think it's kind of unfair for us to just demonize these guys when they've been in the league for 1-2 years and are usually in bad situations. We've known that Bill was not a very good drafter. We know that Elliott Wolf did not do a bang-up job last year. He admitted that he wasn't able to do or didn't do whatever it is, enough research to really put them in position to draft the type of quality players they needed. We've been talking about this, since even before the head coach was signed or announced. They need to make a lot of changes because this was a bad roster going back to last year, and they drafted a bunch of guys who they did not develop really outside of Drake May, maybe if you want to say Marcellus style, on special teams. And this Mike Vrabel, contingent where we're seeing Ryan Cowden and Stretch have prominent roles, and Elliott Wolf, people can say what they want. It's very clear that he's at a different level than everybody else because Vrabel brought these guys. So while, yes, it is somewhat unprecedented, when you have multiple bad drafts and a new regime is brought in to basically clean house, this is what you're going to get.
They clean the house. Like, they clean the house. There's no way to put it. The house it's very clean. I never cleaned the house that well. I always got in trouble. I didn't clean the house well enough when it was my turn to clean the house. Would have helped if my brother helped me more, but that's another story. Brian, your big takeaway from the last 36 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you were saying. Like, I feel like when you look at the 50% number or whatever it ended up being after even the moves today,
I'll count it again.
That's pretty jarring. I think I was like right under 50% yesterday, but now, they just made 2 other claims on the 53-man roster. So maybe it's at or over 53%. Like, that's a pretty jarring number to hear, but you were expecting this, and the roster needed it because it wasn't at a level where, it needed to be, obviously, after back-to-back 4-win seasons. And as Taylor just said, with the regime, you bring in a whole new head coach. Like, this isn't you're promoting Gerard Mayo again, who's been here, for so many years as an assistant, and he's got ties to a lot of these guys on the roster. Like Mike Vrabel and Ryan Cowden and Stretch had no ties to any of these guys on the roster. So they weren't afraid to say, you know what, David Andrews, like, we don't need you. Jonathan Jones, Dietrich Wise, like a lot of these long-term veterans, like we're good. We're going to go get some of ours guys. So it was very much needed, and it was expected because they needed more talent, and they got that high-end talent. And now it's about beyond this year, like continuing to fill out that depth as well moving forward.
If anything, it's surprising how many players are still here because we know they wanted to trade Kyle Duggar and Anthony Jennings. So if anything, The surprise is the number should have been higher, but I feel like this was, and we've talked about this was maybe the easiest roster projection to do, at least in the past few years, because there's like a few guys, I had JaMychal Hasty on, obviously he was off, and Javon Baker, I know some people had him on, off. There was like 3 people that I think there was not consensus on. Everyone else, it's like, yeah, we have a pretty good idea of who this team likes and who is probably more on the outside looking in, or just someone who's not in their future plans.
Yeah, I have 24, by the way, 24 new players on the team, but I counted that very quickly there. In terms of just kind of where they're at now, roster wise, you look at the positions as a big picture. Or Taylor, to your point, like some of the guys they kept, like a guy like Kyle Duggar, you probably needed that depth at safety, right? Like if we had talked about this, if you move on from Kyle Duggar, you're not opening up an at-large roster spot. You're probably opening up a spot for another safety because you're going to need that depth. Anthony Jennings with Braden Swinson getting cut, maybe they just want some more depth there. That group got a little thin between Swinson and Jones, both not making the team. 2 players people thought were going to be on. Caden Wallace, again, rounds out that offensive line group. He gives you a 9th guy. Maybe, he would have been cut if they claimed somebody, but I get giving him the nod over Strange. I think that's the right call. I think it was very clearly time for both the Patriots and Cole Strange to get a fresh start. But the guys they kept, I'm with you. If they could have gotten something for Duggar, sure. But they would have had a replacement at that point. It probably wasn't worth it. And then I'm sorry, I was still counting when you were saying that. Did you guys talk about Kendrick Bourne?
Not yet. But also one thing I want to throw in also, Anthony Jennings had a great media availability today. He is not usually a man of many words. And it's nothing against him. He just isn't a guy who really talks much. But today, in what was probably, last year we didn't really go to him very often for answers. It was more like Sean Wise. But for someone who doesn't really get a lot of attention, that was a difficult conversation to have where we're asking him, like, is this hard for you? Clearly, kind of being on the fringe at the new system, you're not really a great fit. And he answered everything amazingly. He answered, wanting to get better as a pass rusher, acknowledged kind of after being asked a few times that it is a new scheme and that it's something that he's not really used to after coming from a 3-4 defense, now going to a 4-3. But I mean, him acknowledging that it was difficult for him in one of the harder years of his career, I thought he was just fantastic today while speaking to us and answered some pretty tough questions.
That is a Nick Saban, Bill Belichick disciple right there. That is a man that has been led by great men and knows how to handle himself. And again, I loved what I asked him. I was like, because I was trying to see if I get him to say something about Saban. I kind of asked him just in general. I was like, because he had said it was a bit of a difficult summer for him. I was like, well, Mike Vrabel said you handled everything really well, even though you thought it was difficult. So, like, what allowed you to do that? And just good life advice that I can control what I can control. Yep. I can't control what I can't. And, you go out there, he basically said, if I go out there and I perform well and I make it tough for them to cut me, it's exactly what he did. Yeah. I think they were ready to cut him and he just played too well and they couldn't cut him. So, dude deserves a ton of credit for that. Ton of credit for that.
They still want to move on from him, to be fair. But I mean, I'm cool if they keep him because we know he's a good player. The guy's busted his tail all summer. Like, it literally was the summer for him of control. He only repped with the backups. Like, we all knew what was going on, and he still was making plays no matter what unit he was with. I really can't praise the guy enough.
I mean, look, he made the roster. You get that money locked in once you make the roster. So in that sense, he took care of what he needed to take care of. Brian, how do you feel about them keeping Jennings and Duggar?
I was for it just because, you go back to the depth issue with this team. Like, those 2 guys are 2 of your best 53 players, right? And even if they don't necessarily fit in perfectly from a schematic standpoint, like, they are good depth to have, especially at those 2 positions. And you weren't going to trade Kyle Duggar with the whole contract thing. No one really seemed interested. So why not just keep him around? Maybe he gets healthy, and Vrabel kind of hinted at that today, that he's feeling better and you saw him play better. So maybe, Kyle Duggar is getting healthier, then you see more of the old Kyle Duggar come out and you get to keep him around. And if not, then he's just, insurance for Jabril Peppers and some of those guys back there. So I was for it just because they shouldn't be moving off of talented players unless they can get something valuable in return. And I don't think they were going to get much for either of those guys where things stood.
So the other veteran that got cut, if you'll allow me for a moment, I apologize if you listen to some of my other podcasts. You've already heard this one today, but allow me to just talk about Kendrick Bourne very briefly. My guy, one of my favorite players I've covered. Kendrick Bourne's time in New England represents wasted opportunity. and blown potential. And that's mostly on the team side. I don't know that he handled everything perfectly, but I think he was put in a lot of bad situations and did his best to make the most of them. 2021, he's on 1,000-yard pace before he gets COVID. Like, was on 1,000-yard pace, was rolling, gets sick, kind of derailed him for the end of the year. 2022 comes back. All right. Like, had a ton of chemistry with Mac Jones last year, was looking good. Let's see if they can build on it, right? But he wasn't in the rotation early in camp at receiver. He kind of won his way into that job. So, all right, full summer, starting receiver. Let's see it. And he ends up in the doghouse over some things he really should not have been in the doghouse for. And the whole Matt Patricia offense was obviously a mess. It wasn't conducive to anybody. So that year is now lost. Comes back in 23. And I looked this up earlier. Everybody gets on me for, doing too much about pulling a season from 4 years ago. The pace he was on in 23 before he got hurt.
1,000 yards, wasn't it?
900. But who knows? Maybe they had some easier opponents at the end of the year there. Maybe it turns up. 80 catches, 900 yards, 8 touchdowns. Let me ask you this. If really, name a receiver on the Patriots this year. Diggs, Pop, Kyle Williams, anybody. Booty. 80 catches, 900 yards, 8 touchdowns. How do you feel about that?
Good for any of them.
I would take that, right?
So if they did it, I don't know if they're going to do that. But.
He's on that pace. Well, that's the point. He's on that pace in 2023. Tears his ACL Halloween week down in Miami. Misses the rest of that season. Comes back last year. Misses the beginning of the season. Is still clearly working through the ACL. Another just team that's not really functional. Another team that has a lot of systemic issues. And then this year just gets buried as a new coaching staff brings in more personnel. So, look, I can admit, and I think I'm probably among his biggest fans in New England, and I'll wear that. It was time. It was time. The window had passed, and as much as I would love to recapture the magic of that 2021 season, that's now 4 years and an ACL tear ago, and he's 30. So I think it was time for the two to go their separate ways. I wish him the best of luck in San Francisco, wherever he ends up. Love the way he approached the game. In theory, I'll find a role for that guy on my team any day. But it just, I felt this way about Kendrick Bourne for a while. I talked about it, just now the finality of it. Like, for all the wide receiver issues they've had the last 5 years, man, that one just feels like a missed opportunity. Like, they had some guys who just weren't good. And they weren't good, and it's a blown draft pick, and it is what it is. I don't think Kendrick Bourne didn't succeed here because he wasn't good. There were just a whole cavalcade of circumstances that got in his way, and it sucks. So that's my Kendrick Bourne take. I don't know if you guys want to react, but
I mean, it is unfortunate, the few years after 21, but just looking at this year, like it just didn't make much sense.
It was time.
Yeah. When you have the younger guys come in like Kyle Williams and Efton Chisholm, you sign Stephon Diggs, and you go back even before he got hurt in camp, which he hadn't practiced now for 3 weeks. It sounds like he might have been back on the field today, but he's been out since August 1st. And even before that, like, he wasn't playing with Drake May. He didn't catch a pass from Drake May in full teamwork, right? So he was pretty consistently repping with the twos. And then, when you have the younger options, and then if you want to bring the contract into this, where they don't need the 6.5 or 5.5, whatever it ends up being this year, but you need as much money next year, theoretically, at this point, to get out under the cap. You're below or over right now. So with the money and just the fit, and now he's 30, the age, it just definitely seemed like time to move on this year.
Taylor?
I'm on the same page. Like, Alex, you put it very eloquently. I feel like I was just on the film side of that. I loved Kendrick Bourne that first season. I was like, does everybody else see, like, this guy is doing things that nobody else on the team is really doing? Like, remember, he was going up in 2022 as well, like that Bengals game where he popped off. And it was like, oh, he's looking more like his 2021 self, where consistently through his time with the Patriots, he was one of the better yak receivers in the league. And when he was healthy, we also saw the ability to stretch the defense vertically, not as a burner, but as a dude who just like went up and mossed guys at times. And you never got to see what that looked like when he was comfortable with the quarterback who could take full advantage and in an offensive system that knew how to use him. So we've talked about it, Alex. It really is disappointing that he wasn't able to really reach his potential in New England. But now he is, another year removed from the torn ACL. I really hope wherever he is in his next step, he can be, a pretty, reliable number 2, number 3, whatever he is at this career for that team. Cause it's really unfortunate what happened with him here.
Cole Strange, another notable cut, first round pick, doesn't make it to the end of his rookie deal. The writing had been on the, like with some of these other guys, the writing had been on the wall there. Remember, he started camp as the starting left guard. Now, that was after Wes Schweitzer, who was the starting left guard in the spring, retired, which I think has gotten lost in this conversation a little bit. But falls to backup, falls out of the rotation. Ben Brown passes him. Obviously, Jared Wilson passed him. You talk about keeping offensive line depth. Could they have maybe found a way to keep him around? Could they have found a way to keep him on the practice squad? Possibly. Him or Caden Wallace for that last spot. I think Caden Wallace gives you something that Ben Brown doesn't. Cole Strange would have just been too redundant to Ben Brown, in my mind, for me personally. I don't know how you guys feel, but that's another one where it just kind of felt like, was there an avenue to keep him? Maybe, possibly. I don't know if they could trade him. That's the other thing I want to say about Bourne. I do wish they'd finish the trade, like get a 7th round pick for him. You're not keeping him anyway. I understand why they kept him on the roster to get the trade done, but finish the trade. I don't know if there was a trade there with Cole Strange, but would you guys like to see them keep him and keep some more depth there in the interior, or is this another one where it was time?
I think it was probably time too. You mentioned the redundancy with Ben Brown, who pretty clearly jumped him on the depth chart, considering he was working in with the starters, that week in Minnesota. They have that guard center versatility. And then with Caden Wallace, a younger player, you drafted him last year, playing him at guard, kind of different, like more powerful guy than Cole Strange. Keep working with him. And if you need like Caden Wallace in a pinch, an emergency, Barth, we talked about that, the other day, like he can still probably bump out to tackle in an absolute emergency. So I was good with continuing to work with Wallace and keeping Brown in there, because they clearly view Brown as a better player than Strange right now.
Yeah, just Cole Strange was very obvious once. Like he had the trouble at center where like he never really found any consistency as a snapper in the shotgun or under center. When he lost his job, I thought in the Vikings game, he showed some signs of life. I think that was one of the better performances we'd seen from him. But then against the Giants, it was like, all right, yeah, we're all rooting for Cole. What he went through injury-wise was horrible. The guy had to relearn how to walk. Like we were all rooting for him. But it did reach a point where it's like, yeah, I just don't know that this is sustainable, because the issues with power never really got fixed. And you have a Caden Wallace where he's bigger, he looks more like a Mike Vrabel style lineman, and he's under contract for more years and gives you tackle versatility. I think that's more useful than a guy who really only played left guard in the NFL, was okay in the spurts we saw him at right, but we barely saw that really in the preseason. So another one where it wasn't surprising, and just hope that he is able to find success back with Scott Peters now that he's with the Browns.
There are more
2020. Damn it, my bad.
Yeah, AFC North, brown and close
orange,
to similar colors. Yeah, brown and orange, black and orange. I think it was Doug Hyde who had this. There are more Patriots 2022 draft picks on the Browns practice squad than on the Patriots roster, because Bailey Zappi is there as well.
What does that say about the
Browns? More than people would probably think. It says more about the Patriots and the Browns, but it doesn't say nothing about the Browns. That's fair. We'll get to the guys they brought in the waiver claims and the practice squad, but just anything else, you guys from the cuts, Braden Swinson, Brian, we can get into the kickers, like Javon Baker, although we can talk about him with the practice squad too. Any other guys that they let go that stood out to you for one reason or another?
So I'll just say with Swinson, because, I was a Swinson guy ahead of the draft. Yeah. He got passed by Ponder, right? Like Elijah Ponder just had a better summer than him. Obviously, Mike Smith loves him, and Mike Smith, was complimentary of Swinson too there, but he didn't call him the best free agent pickup he's ever seen there. So, when they keep Anthony Jennings, Ponder jumps him. That just kind of seemed to open the door for Swinson to get released there. But glad he went unclaimed and they get to keep working with him, because I think there's definitely talent there. It's just, seeing if he's a fit, on and off the field there. So glad he's at least back in the building on the practice squad.
Yeah, I think it's hard to justify keeping 6 edge defenders. So if you're going to keep Anthony Jennings, then Braden Swinson makes sense. I don't think it was a talent thing. I definitely think that I just think Ponder's a freak athlete, and a big reason he didn't get drafted was because he went to Cal Poly, not because the guy wasn't good or didn't flash or anything like that. So I'm not shocked that he passed Swinson, especially when you saw the difference in their special teams ability, like Ponder being a playmaker and Swinson being a bit inconsistent there. But him coming back, I was glad, because like you said, Brian, the dude's clearly talented. I don't know about the whole, the personality thing. That's why he fell in the draft. I have no idea how that's been relative to the Patriots. I know.
Sorry to cut into that. If it's that big of an issue, they probably wouldn't have brought him back on the practice squad.
Right. I just felt like that was a reason when he got cut. It's like, oh, does that have something to do with it? I don't know how big of a deal that was. Just felt worth acknowledging. And then I guess Javon Baker, as someone who I know I've said I thought was going to make the roster as a special teamer, and he made the 53, right? So I think we all knew if you're only there for special teams, you are living on the fringe. Like Del Pettis is in a very similar position, even though I think he has maybe a closer role to playing time because of his man coverage abilities and things like that. But once they signed Charles Woods, I think it was like, oh, okay. I'm seeing the writing on the wall here. Woods was a special teams, not ace, but core special teamer for the Rams in a similar role. He's got more experience. Keep developing Javon, because as the receiver, you can't really put him on the field as a wide receiver. You can't. So it makes sense to have a guy like a Woods, who if he's going to be active on game days, can give you depth in the slot, a little bit outside as well. So yeah, Javon Baker, wasn't surprised that he was cut, but we don't know if he's going to be back on the practice squad yet, but they have another spot because David Olajiga doesn't count because he's an international pathway player. So it would make perfect sense for Javon to be back sometime tomorrow.
The reporting, I think it was Mark Daniels had that, like, that's the plan if he clears waivers is for him to be back, and somebody that could certainly be elevated. We'll get more to the practice squad in a bit. I'll just say on the kickers, I know some people are surprised Parker Romo had better field goal numbers in the summer, which is true. And this isn't me, yes or no, just from what Vrabel said. Slated the entire offseason going back to the spring, and Parker Romo was not good in the spring. Andy Borregales was much better in the spring. The kickoffs are a part of it as well. Borregales was better on kickoffs. And again, they might just be banking on potential. And some people may say that they don't want potential at kicker. Give me the guy that's going to put the ball through the uprights, not the guy that's going to hypothetically put the ball through the uprights. But Borregales showed a much higher ceiling at Miami than Romo has either at Virginia Tech or his time in the NFL. So I think that's where that decision comes from. I don't think Parker Romo's coming back. Vrabel was pretty final in his comments today. Thanked him for the hard work, wished him well. It's usually not, I wish him well, and I'll see him tomorrow when he's back here on the practice squad. It's
like how we talked about all the guys that he cut who won Super Bowls here. Where it's like, yeah, right. Thanks for your service. See you later.
So, usually not a guy you're bringing back. So that's the kicker battle. I want to get into the guys they added, but first let's hear from our friends at PrizePicks,
Barth and Taylor, and they want to know if you guys know ball, because the NFL season is right around the corner, and the best place to spice up the action is over on PrizePicks. The best place to cash in on your favorite sports. Just pick more or less on player stats like receptions, rushing yards, touchdowns, passing yards, passing touchdowns, shoot over to defense, sacks, interceptions, any of it for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash, and even take advantage of their weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, where each Tuesday projections can be discounted from 15 to 25%. So I know we're waiting for NFL football right around the corner, so we keep rolling with some baseball in our lineups. And of course, Roman Anthony is still in there, more than half a hit, as the Red Sox are rolling. And you can also get risky and go home runs, RBIs, extra base hits, all of that on your PrizePicks lineup as well. And keep doing that even when football comes back. Find some Patriots, pair them with Roman Anthony, and create a winning lineup there. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, all over on PrizePicks. Run your game.
All right. So I was texting somebody about Adam Hines. You guys know about Adam Hines. Taylor
one does.
Adam Hines. Played for the Red Sox way back.
Remember today when I didn't know who the Bruins head coach was?
Yeah, Brian, what'd you think of Marco Sturm at practice? And thanks to our friends at PrizePicks, by the way.
I was Barth. Did you stay for his scrum?
I did not. I saw that when I was leaving. I didn't realize that happened.
So
you didn't want to grill him?
It was all like the TV guys, and they were asking him like, "Oh, how happy is it to be back in, New England and just have Patriots practice and what's Vrabel?" I just wanted to start jumping in there and be like, "So what we thinking for the first line this year? Are we rolling geeky Lindholm pasta, or what's going on there?" But I didn't think you would appreciate that.
Can you imagine So you would have had, who would have come at you quicker, Patriots PR or Bruins PR? Because Bruins PR was there too.
Oh man, that probably wouldn't have ended well for me.
Credit to Sturm for even doing that. I don't know that I've ever seen any guest at camp. Forget like a coach. I know. Well, I guess 1 year Randy Moss did it, but he was here for somebody's induction to the Patriots Hall of Fame. I don't remember who it was, but it was somebody. But he refused to talk about. Somebody asked him another question. He goes, "I'm just here to talk about whoever it was again. I don't remember who it was, but Yeah. So good
We didn't
for Marco Sturm for doing that.
We didn't get Missoula, which that would have been fun to fit.
That would have been
Joe Missoula scrum. Those always look interesting.
Missoula would have loved it. Missoula would have been breaking down the defense. We'll get Taylor into hockey this year, though. I said we're going to do that. We're going to turn Taylor into a Bruins
We
fan.
shall see, gentlemen.
Let's get into the Patriots additions. Let's get into they weren't at practice today. I was going to say the non-Marco Sturm additions at practice. There you go. Brian, Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets claimed off waivers, QB3. I think that the big question here, we all know what Tommy DeVito is. Tommy DeVito is a backup quarterback who got hot and went on a run that year that all the backup quarterbacks were doing it. Same as Josh Dobbs. I think it was the same year, but he kind of similar profile to Josh Dobbs. Stylistically, a little bit different quarterback, but the background's kind of the same. So Taylor, I think the question everybody really has, not getting zappy fever here, but can he push Dobbs for the QB2 role?
I think so. Now, when we talked about what kind of Patriots or third quarterback the Patriots are going to add, I know for me, I was a little hesitant because I'm thinking, okay, if you like Joshua Dobbs, are you going to bring in a veteran and be like, hey, we like basically like dating, like we like you as a person, but we don't like you if we ever have to play you. And hey, if Dobbs is cool with that, that's one thing. I just figured that he came here expecting that he was going to be the backup and a mentor. But at the same time, we all saw it. Even Mike Vrabel acknowledged that he's been inconsistent this summer. And he's more of the kind of backup who is going to go out there and kind of sling it, which is Barry Boom or bust, as we saw all summer. There's going to be times where he threads the needle in a whole shot or, throws right down the pipe for a deep gain. And there's going to be times where, he's going to have really bad misses or sometimes he'll throw into bad windows. He did get better towards the end, which Vrabel also acknowledged. But, you also have the moments like in Minnesota where you're putting the ball outside guys' frame and getting them hurt. And then we didn't see him against the Giants. So I think it does make sense to add someone as a third quarterback. I thought it'd be somebody younger that you could maybe turn into a trade chip down the road. I don't know. Like Tommy DeVito's 27. I don't know if he's that guy necessarily. No. But if they have to start a backup quarterback, a younger guy who I think is much better working within the confines of the system and is coming from an offshoot of Josh McDaniels' offense, it makes perfect sense. I just thought maybe they'd go for somebody a little bit younger, but I really do like the fit. And also Ryan Cowden, DeVito was drafted the year Ryan Cowden got to the Giants as basically an advisor to the general manager. So, all of this makes absolutely perfect sense.
So, Brian, the second part of that question, the first part is, can he push Josh Dobbs for the backup job, which I think the answer is yes.
I meant yes. Yes.
Will he be afforded the opportunity to? Will the team open, and it will be behind closed doors. We won't see it unless one day suddenly Josh Dobbs is tagged as the emergency third quarterback instead of DeVito. It's kind of similar to what we did with Matt Corral a few years ago, or what we were going to do with Matt Corral a few years ago if he stayed with the team. Do you think this is a real conversation, or are we wasting our time and he's just here to be QB3 and run the scout team? Because I would argue if that's all they wanted, they could have gotten somebody on the practice squad. I think if you're going to have a quarterback on the active roster, it should be to improve the position somewhere. DeVito's obviously not coming anywhere close to May, but does he come close to Dobbs? Will they give him the opportunity?
I would say it's tough at this point just because the snaps are so limited for kind of those backups, like as you get into regular season practice mode. But I think the advantage DeVito has, and Taylor just hinted at it, like he knows he should be pretty familiar with this offense, right? Like coming from Brian Daboll's offense there in New York. So I think the door could be open. It's just, how do they divvy up those snaps, and manage those snaps in practice? Because May is getting the majority of them, as we know, and then it's pretty limited on the scout team behind them. But I think with the baseline level of this offense, he should know, and the performance we've seen from Dobbs, and I've kind of thought Dobbs was better to end the summer than he was to start, which was more encouraging. But I think he definitely could push him if given the opportunity.
Yeah, I just hope he's given that opportunity. Get the best possible. And there's a chance that whoever that QB2 is going to have to start a game or two this year. So maybe that does play itself out in real time. I know, Taylor, I know, but we see Drake May run around. We know what this offensive line is. I'm not rooting for it.
That's where this whole backup quarterback conversation should just point back to. If either of these guys has to start, you're pounding the alarm probably anyway.
Again, I don't think anybody in the Patriots, based on reports, had made a point of clear the runway for Drake May, right? That was the report. That's why Joe Milton's no longer here, because Joe Milton thought of himself as a potential starter. I'm sure Dobbs and DeVito are competitive, but I don't think anybody's unsure of their role on the team. But With what Dobbs showed this summer, and I don't think DeVito's always been great, but if he gets on a heater, I think he can catch where Dobbs is at. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully both of them are just on the bench and we get 17 games of Drake May, but we'll see. Their other addition was not Charles Woodson. That would have been great. Hall of Famer. Charles Wood, a defensive back. Taylor seems excited or no?
Wait, is it Charles Wood? Charles Woods. No, it's going to be so.
I know because they have Craig Woodson.
Craig Woodson, Charles Woods. It's going to be.
But the Charles Woodson thing is going to confuse me because he's one of my favorite players growing up. Charles Woods from the Rams, SMU product, when undrafted last year. I think played in like 2 or 3 games for them. Taylor, like you said earlier, primarily on special teams. I do like his defensive makeup in that it seems like he can play multiple spots. Primarily a slot guy, but can play a little safety, can play a little boundary corner. That I had said this going into roster cuts. I thought they were thin in the secondary. Now they kept more safeties than I thought they would, but Duggar and Pettis are those guys kind of on the edge of the roster. They're definitely thin at corner with 5 guys and Christian Gonzalez still not practicing, plus the injury histories of Carlton Davis and Marcus Jones. So it felt like they needed another body there. And, this time of year, the guys you get, the more you can do, the better. This is the ultimate depth player. So he's going to play special teams, play multiple spots in the secondary. Is he going to be great? I don't know, but he's a guy you can throw out there and can handle a number of different roles. And for, what is he, player 52, 53 on the roster? That's as much as you can ask for, Brian.
Yeah, and I think the size, like 5'11", 190, I believe it was, like fits kind of that variable mold if you want to play him in the slot, but then he has that versatility to kind of bounce back and forth. And I think the big way he would get on the field right away, unless the whole cornerback room goes down, it is on special teams. And that's like right when you hear he claimed, I think we all looked at each other like, Javon Baker, like this is probably bad news for him because he plays gunner. He was a jammer on both Rams special teams units. So that he could have a pretty early role right there. Then just to go back to, with Ryan Cowden and Tommy DeVito in New York, like Stretch was in LA last year. So another guy with some familiarity and a connection to this new regime.
All right, Taylor, before I could finish reading the tweet that Charles Woods was claimed, you were already watching the film. I can attest this. I was sitting right next to him. He had it ready to go. What'd you see?
All right. So defensively, I thought he could have been more consistent as a tackler. There were some times where he would hit guys and kind of just slide off. So that's going to be one area of concern. But he blew up a few screens. I really liked him coming downhill. They used him as a blitzer. He was competitive in coverage. He went up against Trey Harris a few times. He allowed a deep catch, but was like right there. It was a great job from Trey Harris tracking it, and then broke up a fade. I think like a few plays later when they targeted Harris in the red zone. So again, I don't know if this is a guy you want to play. Yes, he played 12 games last year. That was on special teams, played very, very little defensively, and nothing really happened.
That was right. If I can correct myself, when I said he played 2 or 3 games, that was defense. He played more on special teams. That was
right, yeah. But he was primarily a special teamer for them. And most of what I have on him defensively is from the preseason. So obviously we need to take that with a grain of salt. I know I was kind of joking, Alex, like, Marcus Jones, is he in trouble? I don't think it's that. Obviously, if anything, the fact that Christian Gonzalez did not practice today, and, I didn't want to be alarmist. The fact that it seemed like they put him in bubble wrap, that's, it's whatever. He's an all-pro. That's fine. But when he's not practicing at this stage, that's a little bit more concerning. So we know Marcus Jones is a guy that they are okay with kicking outside as well if they need to. We've seen it in practice where he's not just in the slot. Sometimes if they didn't have Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez, he was one of those guys they'd kick outside. So like you guys mentioned, it's just a little bit more depth, even though in terms of that inside spot, I think it's Marcus Jones, Alex Austin, Jabril Peppers are the safeties depending on the package. So wouldn't expect to see too much of Woods on defense, but special teams, it definitely seems like he could have a pretty prominent role.
So this was the first wave, and it's the biggest wave. Like, this is when it all happens, right? But you have teams that claimed guys on waivers. I think the Titans claimed 4 right at the top of the waiver wire, including a couple corners. I wonder if the Patriots would have been in on any of those guys. So now you have teams that have to waive guys to open spots for the guys they claimed, or teams signing players off other people's practice squads. And then there's going to be another wave tomorrow, and it kind of just sort of lessens out as you get into the season. Is there anywhere else you'd like to see them add, or you're expecting them to add any more spots you'd like to see them target? I think at this point, for the caliber of players they're going to get, you're more or less set. I wouldn't hate adding another linebacker, although Jack Gibbons was back at practice today, which is encouraging. Maybe a third tight end, but I think, we'll get to the practice squad in a bit, keeping 2 tight ends on the practice squad. You can do that with game day elevations. Any other spots realistically for what's available now? Obviously, we'd all like to see them go get number 1 wide receiver, right? For what's available now, any other spots you'd like to see them add in this next wave or two of waivers? Taylor?
I'll say, I think for the most part, like considering Duggar.
You can say no, too. You can just say no.
No, I have one, but I really do think that, the problem with this team is a lack of top-end talent. I think at most positions, they actually have even tackle, I think they have better depth than a lot of other teams. Like, I know we all like to be, I don't, but I know people like to crap on Vidarian Lowe. Not a whole lot of spot tackles that are going to be better than him and have the experience he has and all those things. But the interior offensive line still scares me because I think right now the way I have it is you have one quality starter in Mike Kadlick. I have Garrett Bradbury graded as a spot starter, and I have Jared Wilson as a quality starter potential, but we have no idea what he's going to look like against starting caliber talent. And then a guy who might be in the mix is Ben Brown, who is also a spot starter. So obviously you're not going to get a guy who's probably going to push for a top job, but I would just like them to have more experience, specifically guard depth, if they can get it. But for the most part, other than that, I think they've got like solid depth considering what you would be able to get at this point anyway.
Brian?
Yeah, I don't think there's probably that much upgrades to be had. I was curious, just on the practice squad, even like they only have 1 tackle, and that's Jack Conley, who might be best suited as a guard. So maybe there's just another tackle out there. And then I was also going to bring this up, and Jason beat me to it in the chat. Jakob Johnson, like, come on, is Jakob Johnson not going to make his way over here? And Jack Westover made the 53. That was kind of their fullback in the preseason and then training camp. But like the Jakob Johnson, if they do want more of that Brock Lampy traditional guy, like that's the guy to go get right there. It feels like.
And do you remember that he was actually asked about him? I don't remember who it was, but somebody asked Vrabel, and he said, he said, like, we'll find somebody to do the job, but he kind of called him like a decent player, like what he did or whatever like that. It doesn't sound like exactly Vrabel's biggest fan, as much as I would like to hype this up. It didn't necessarily sound that way, but God, that would just make way too much sense. But he's also 30. Jakob's 30.
So I looked this up. He's played 70 career games because that's a position where you don't have a long career. Jakob Johnson's played 70 games. James Devlin played 83. He was pretty banged up at the end. Yeah, you're right to make that face, Taylor. Although some of those were early in his career just on special teams. I don't think he was the full-time fullback yet. But
then also like the playoff runs too. He basically played another entire season.
That's a good point. So, but I do wonder if Jakob Johnson's kind of he might be done. He might look at, Devlin, and it seems like by all accounts Devlin's doing well, but I can't imagine, his knees have to creak a little bit, I would think, when he's getting up. So I wonder if Jakob Johnson looks that. But I wouldn't hate a fullback in general. And I was talking about the active roster. I'm totally with you. Tackle on the practice squad, because the practice squad group, as it stands right now as of Wednesday night, running back Terrell Jennings, wide receivers John Giles and Jeremiah Webb, tight end CJ Dupree and G Scott, offensive lineman Alec Lindstrom, Mekhi Butler, and Jack Connolly, defensive lineman Davari Ritzy, David Olajiga, edge rushers Truman Jones, Braden Swinson, linebacker Cam Riley, and then cornerbacks Brandon Crossley, Miles Battle, Kobe Minor. So that is 16 players. That is full on paper. Taylor, I think you mentioned it earlier. Olajiga qualifies as an IPP player, so they can get the exception. Based on some reports, it sounds like maybe that's just going to go right to Javon Baker. Vrabel did say that he expects this group to change over the next couple of days and then obviously over the course of the season. So maybe some of these guys aren't as locked in as we think. Maybe there is another offensive lineman or a fullback or somebody coming that, they wanted to see how the first round of cuts went before they made those changes. Any names stand out on here to you? Like I would say, who do you think is the most likely to be the first elevation or get that first roster spot when one opens up? But that feels like it's Truman Jones pretty easily, right, Brian?
Yeah, I would say so. I was just looking through it. Unless like if Baker does make it and they want him,
or maybe Baker, yeah.
Teams. I mean, Barth, that was our path, right? He makes the initial, then he gets cut, and then you add him on the practice squad elevation. So if they follow our path for Javon Baker there, but couple corners, like if Gonzo isn't ready to go, they kept Battle and Brandon Crossley, who I thought had some impressive moments in the preseason around the football at camp. But it would probably be Truman Jones week 1. I could see that.
Taylor, your thoughts on the practice squad?
Makes a lot of sense, especially like the receivers. We had a pretty good idea Giles and Webb would be back as long as they weren't claimed. I think those are like two really quality practice squad players. Like they showed out a bit this preseason. Terrell Jennings, it's just good to see. It seems like he's probably healthier. We saw him out there today. So the whole thing with him was like when I had Hasty on, it was because I had no idea what was going to happen with Terrell Jennings, but definitely makes sense as a guy who was on the practice squad last year. I'm not really surprised the tight ends are back, but you could clearly upgrade because neither one of those guys really impressed us.
He's got a few nice practices. He's got a few nice practices working.
He did, but like it wasn't enough, Like
that's absolutely fair.
Yeah. Mekhi Butler is one of the more interesting ones. I really did think he showed some power, physicality, opened some gaps in the run game this preseason. So I was not excited, but I was happy to see him back. And if we're talking about elevation candidates, Miles Battle and Truman Jones are probably at the top of that list because I don't really think there's anybody else on this practice squad other than maybe Terrell Jennings, who you'd really want playing in games at this point. The rest of those guys are really either developmental players or break glass in case of emergencies, starters or depth.
Or just good scout team players like John Giles. I'll tell you one guy I am glad they kept, and I wonder if we do see, now this would kind of have to be a specific circumstance. I'm glad they kept Jeremiah Webb. And you don't need to see him at wide receiver, obviously, like that they have enough depth that shouldn't come up. But he looked really good as a returner, kicks and punts in the summer. I thought he really flashed there. And if they feel like the kick return game isn't producing the results they want, or Marcus Jones gets banged up on punt return or something, you need a returner for a game, right? You just want to try to throw a spark. Or maybe you catch a team that has a weak kickoff coverage unit. You think, all right, we want to load up. We want to get creative with this one. That's absolutely somebody you could elevate and plug in and might be able to make a play or two for you. So
Webb also blocks his tail off, and he's their fastest player, not named Kyle Williams, offensively in terms of skill players. Like he and Kyle Williams move very different. Look, Baker has build-up speed if he comes back on the practice squad. But like I remember that first catch he had, the slant or the curl, and then he just turned upfield. I was like, oh, wow, that looks a lot different than what we see at wide receiver. So to your point, Jeremiah Webb is a good addition.
So I don't know how much you see him on offense unless it gets really thin, but I love the idea of having him. I'll keep saying it. The kick returns are going to be big this year. The kick returns are going to matter. And, little bonus card in your back pocket if you need it. You want to put some juice into that unit or a little extra depth for the returner. I'm glad they kept him around. I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see him once or twice this year in that role.
I wonder what week is Josh McDaniels going to have to go to Jeremy Springer here and be like, you cannot use Travion Henderson on kick return anymore because he's too valuable to this offense, right? Like I could totally see that. And then, Gibson could still be back there, but they use like Javon at times as kick returner. So if he's not there, like maybe it is Jeremiah Webb next in line there.
And that's exactly what the practice squad elevations are for. You're not keeping a backup kick returner on the 53-man roster. Because again, I don't think like he's a wide receiver that's going to crack their rotation, but you got 16 players on the practice squad. You want to keep a backup kick returner there. That makes all the sense in the world. And so that's my Jeremiah Webb take. Anybody you're disappointed they didn't keep?
Not really, honestly.
So I have one, and they cut. He was part of the early round of cuts, so I wasn't getting my hopes up. I really thought Jordan Polk was building to something, and not being like a starting caliber player, but we just sort of talked about with them claiming Craig Woods, like that ability to play multiple positions in the secondary, high-end athleticism, play on special teams. I just think they kept 3 corners, so I don't think they would have kept 4. I might have kept him over Crossley, personally.
Yeah, that's one move I would probably.
But like, you weren't going to keep him in addition to that group. But I don't know. I thought he was really stacking days. Maybe he comes back down the road, but I thought he'd show enough. One of the 69 best players on the team, right? When you factor in the practice squad. So that was the one guy. They're not screwed because they let him go. I don't think they're like missing out on anything. But Jordan Polk, to me, earned a spot on the practice squad, even if he didn't get it.
Just noticed that DeMontre Jacobs is still not on a team. Not that I think he's going to come back, but there was the report that Vidarian that they were being floated as trades. I was like, Vidarian makes some sense. And as much as we like Trey Jacobs, like he did not have a good summer. So yeah, it looks like that might have been some BS because I don't know who was going to give a pick for a guy who, struggled in the regular season and hadn't really shown significant development.
The Rats were trying to pump some interest in him there. in the trade market. Barth, just on the
Yeah.
surprise they're not on the practice squad. Were you surprised like how Vrabel spoke, and you mentioned it earlier, but about Parker Romo? Because I figured based off his summer, like you could have some insurance for Borgalis, but is this just, let's put all of our faith in the rookie and not have another kicker hanging around?
So yeah, in one sense, I'm with you. I would have kept them as insurance, or maybe you can't trade players off the practice squad, I guess, but like to have around. But similar to clearing the decks for Drake May, clearing the runway for Drake May. And now look, if you're an NFL kicker, some might argue you should be able to handle that kind of pressure. Another guy there looking over your shoulder. Or maybe they just knew he was going to get signed. Maybe they knew if we put him on the practice squad, he's going to get signed a day in. That's a spot we could have used on somebody else. We might lose. Like if they get and now at that point I would trade him. But if they get the intel that they're not going to be able to keep him on the practice squad, I don't know. Do you use the spot just to go through the exercise of it and say you tried your best, or do you move on? And he probably knows he has a market, and he goes to them and says, "Can I just get to my new team?" And you do it for the benefit of the player.
Also, everything they were doing was showing that it was Andy's job. They were not really entertaining Romo very much in that last couple of weeks.
No, that would be my guess, is they knew they weren't going to be able to keep him. And again, you could go through the academic exercise of, we waived him, cleared waivers, he's on the practice squad, he gets signed off the practice squad. But, there's another, maybe that's one player, and it's Javon Baker, right, who you can't keep. And okay, so now we'll just save that spot for Javon Baker and not go through that whole rigmarole. So there you go. That is the Patriots' initial roster. Did we get to everything? I think we got to everything. I missed anything?
I'll just say Roman Anthony just hit a leadoff home run again. So I hope everyone got him on your PrizePicks lineup there right after I gave that read. Just perfect on time right there.
Taylor, is it time to call Peyton Tolley up?
I've been saying.
I love asking Taylor other Boston sports team questions and just getting his answer. His gut instinct's usually right. I don't know, Brad. I'm ready for Peyton Tolley.
I'm like Amit with other sports.
Friday night, Paul Skeens, Peyton Tolley at Fenway. Right? Skeens is Friday?
Oh, wow.
I think so. Maybe. I'm not positive. I can't see
whatever day he is, I know is the day that spot comes up in the rotation again.
Friday, the projected is Paul Skeens versus Dustin May.
Oh, okay. So maybe they changed it. At one point, it was lined up that way. But
man, I'm so sad we're going to miss it.
I think it's Saturday. Yeah, there's no projected starter Saturday, and then Giolito is Sunday, so they would need a guy Saturday.
All right, we'll talk about
Where's Kyle Harrison? Does Kyle Harrison exist?
Or Kyle Harrison could get called up too. That's another one.
Like it would be nice if something from that trade was helpful right now.
All right, we'll talk about something else, Taylor.
Don't drag me down, Brian. Don't get me thinking about that again.
We'll bring it back to football here, and something I know Taylor actually does care about. Are we doing the punter league again?
I like this. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
We got to figure out. We got to set it up so it's a little more interactive, and we may tweak some things. Right, if you guys are in, so we'll be back next week. We'll have our shows. We'll do the draft live again. That was fun. Yeah. We'll definitely do the draft live again. And yeah, subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube feed to get all our shows obviously there. Taylor's going to have more content coming. Brian and I will be back next week. Next week is game week, so we'll have a game preview Thursday. We'll see what we do Tuesday. Tuesday might be the draft, the punter draft, or Monday or Tuesday or whenever we do it. Taylor, you got anything coming the rest of the week? What do you got tomorrow and Friday?
I'm going to do a mailbag sometime this week. We're also going to try to get Discord chat going because we haven't done that in a while. But now that we're getting back into the swing of things and it's normal, that should be fixed. Also have a very special guest coming on next week. So be looking out for that.
I just discovered the Discord. I did not know they talk about us in there. They talk about like the show as much as they talk about the team itself.
Oh, hell yeah. I did not realize that.
So hello to everybody in the Discord. I did not know that was the thing, but now I do. All right. So we'll be back next time. Until then, for Brian Hines and Taylor Kyles, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for tuning in. And if we don't see you, enjoy your weekends, everybody.